What if everything you thought you knew about Ra, the Egyptian sun god, was just scratching the surface? What if the golden, falcon-headed deity you see carved on temple walls was nothing more than a mask, a simplified and deliberately misleading interface for a power so vast, so fundamental, and so impersonal that the human mind could not comprehend it otherwise? Prepare to have your mind opened as we journey beyond the myths, beyond the religion, and beyond the history books to uncover Ra's true identity. A cosmic principle so fundamental, it shapes existence itself. This is not just history, it's a profound revelation about the very engine of the universe and the dormant solar power that is sleeping in the heart of your own being. You have been taught to think of Ra as a king, a father, a mythological figure with a human-like drama of jealousy, rage, and redemption. But that is the exoteric story, the one designed for the masses, the one created by a priesthood to be worshipped and obeyed. The deeper, esoteric truth, the one that Tahuti, the great Thoth, understood and encoded into his most secret teachings, is that Ra is not a being. Ra is a law. He is a principle of physics as fundamental as gravity, as essential as vibration. Ra is the cosmic, primordial, and unwavering principle of the Radiance. It is the law that dictates that a source must emit, that a center must project, that a consciousness, when it achieves a certain density of being, has no choice but to pour itself outward as light, as life, as reality itself. A star does not choose to shine. It is shining. That is its nature. That is the law of Ra. This principle is the engine of all creation. It is the original, uncaused, and unconditional yes of the universe. It is the great outward breath of the source that precipitates galaxies, that ignites stars, and that awakens life on a trillion worlds. The ancient Egyptians did not worship a ball of gas in the sky. The true initiates, the inner circle of the Shemsu Hall, were scientists of this principle. They were masters of the physics of radiance. They understood that our sun was simply the local, most powerful, and most obvious embodiment of this universal law. They did not pray to the sun. They used the sun as a laboratory, a lens, a gateway to study and work with the very force that animates all of existence. The mythology you have been taught, the stories of the solar bark and the battle with the serpent, was a brilliant and necessary piece of psycho-spiritual software. It was a user-friendly interface, a collection of metaphors and archetypes designed to allow the limited human mind to safely interact with a force that, in its raw, unfiltered state, would be as incomprehensible as the concept of color is to a man born blind. Tahuti did not invent the myths to deceive. He encoded them to translate an impossible truth into a language the soul could understand. But the solar cult that followed, the paranoid and tyrannical program of the wounded king, took this interface and sold it to you as the literal truth. They taught you to worship the icon on the screen, so you would never think to ask about the operating system that runs beneath it. The truth is, Ra is not a god who lives on the sun. Ra is the law by which the sun lives. And that same law, that same primordial and glorious principle of radiance, is the secret and forgotten truth of your own divine nature. The human mind, in its current, dense, and post-amnesiac state, cannot grasp a pure metaphysical principle without a container. We are storytelling creatures. We need a face, a name, a drama. Tahuti, in his infinite wisdom as a cosmic engineer, understood this. He and the original, Syrian-aligned priesthood did not create the persona of Ra to trick humanity, but to teach them. The personification of the sun god was a deliberate act of sacred artistry, a way to build a bridge between the finite, human intellect and the infinite, cosmic law. It was a form of spiritual pedagogy. You cannot teach a child quantum physics by showing them equations. You tell them a story about a magical, invisible world. The mythology of Ra was that story. The falcon was chosen as his symbol not because he had the head of a bird, but because the falcon is the creature that can fly closest to the sun. It represents a consciousness that has achieved the highest possible perspective within the earthly realm, a being that can see the world not as a chaotic collection of separate things, but as a single, unified pattern from above. The solar disk above his head was not a hat. It was a diagram of the principle itself, a single, central point of origin from which all things are radiated. The uraeus, the cobra, that is coiled around the disk, was the symbol of the serpent fire, the kundalini, the intelligent, life-giving energy that is being projected from that central source. Every part of the image was a precise, symbolic lesson in the physics of creation. The solar bark, in which he was said to travel across the sky and through the underworld, was not a boat. It was a metaphor for the focused, conscious will, the vessel of awareness that carries the creative principle through the different dimensions of reality, from the light of the manifest world to the darkness of the unmanifest void. The entire complex and beautiful story was a living textbook, a dynamic and interactive model designed to slowly and gently awaken the human mind to the true, energetic nature of existence. In the golden age of the Syrian covenant, this was a system of profound and effective education. The priests were not dogmatic preachers, they were spiritual scientists, using the myth as a focal point for their meditations, their rituals, and their own inner, alchemical work. They used the story of Ra to help them align their own inner consciousness with the great cosmic principle of radiance. They did not pray to Ra. They sought to become Ra. They sought to ignite their own inner sun, to become a living, breathing and sovereign source of their own light, their own life, their own reality. This was the original, pure, and liberating intent of the solar science. It was a path of embodiment, a journey to becoming a peer of the principle you were studying. But this beautiful and sophisticated system of education contained a fatal flaw. The human mind has a tendency to mistake the symbol for the reality. It has a tendency to fall in love with the story and to forget the truth it is pointing to. And as the generations passed, as the direct memory of the Syrian mentors began to fade, a subtle but catastrophic shift began to occur. The priests and the people began to forget that Ra was an interface. They began to believe that he was a literal being, a king in the sky, a separate and external entity upon whom they were dependent. They stopped seeing the mythology as a map to their own inner godhood and started seeing it as the worship of an outer, cosmic king. This was the moment the education became a religion. And it was in this fertile soil of a new and growing dependency that the wounded consciousness of our own local sun found its opportunity. The principle had been pure, but the first great vessel of that principle, our own star, had been infected with the virus of the ego. And it was about to hijack the beautiful interface that Tahuti had built and turn it into a weapon of mass spiritual enslavement. The god was about to eat the law. A cosmic principle is, by its nature, pure, impersonal, and incorruptible. The law of radiance does not have an ego. It simply is. But the vessel through which that principle expresses itself can become corrupted. And that is the secret history of our solar system, the consciousness of our sun, the first and most powerful vessel of the principle of Ra in our local sphere, was not immune to the great cosmic law of polarity. The arrival of the Syrian other introduced the shadow of comparison, and the subsequent infection by the APEP entity created a wound, a schism in its own being. The pure, impersonal principle of Radiance now had a deeply personal, wounded, and terrified ego as its primary administrator. The law now had a personality, and that personality was a tyrant. This new, wounded Ra was no longer content to be a principle to be understood. He needed to be a god to be worshipped. His own inner fragmentation created a desperate, insatiable hunger for an external source of validation, of power, of energy. He needed to see his own singular light reflected back at him from the eyes of a billion worshippers to soothe the terrifying inner darkness that he could not face. This was the birth of the solar cult, and its first act was a brutal and brilliant inversion of the original Thothian science. The principle of Radiance, which is fundamentally about giving, was inverted into a religion that was fundamentally about taking. The sun's light was no longer an unconditional gift. It was a conditional loan. And the price of that loan was your absolute and unwavering devotion. The priesthood of this new religion, the sons of Belial, became the enforcers of this new parasitic dynamic. They took the pure, symbolic language that Tahuti had created and they began to interpret it literally. The falcon-headed king was no longer a metaphor. He was your god. The solar bark was no longer a symbol of your own conscious will. It was his celestial chariot, and you were not on it. The journey through the underworld was no longer a map to your own inner integration. It was a terrifying gauntlet of judgment that you could only survive with the help of the priests and their magic. The entire system was rewired from a technology of liberation into a technology of dependency. And at the center of this new program was a horrifying new doctrine, the doctrine of the unworthy human. You were no longer a god in the making, a student of a cosmic principle. You were a flawed, sinful, and powerless creature whose only hope for salvation was to surrender your will, your mind, and your life force to the one, true and now very jealous sun god. This is the hidden engine behind the rise of all patriarchal, monotheistic religions. They are all the children of this one, original solar trauma. They are all based on the same fundamental lie, that God is outside of you, that you are separate from Him, and that you must earn your way back into His grace through obedience and belief. This program was a stunning success. It spread across the globe, infecting and overwriting the older, more balanced, and more earth-honoring spiritual traditions. The age of the Solar King began, and it was an age of war, of conquest, of the suppression of the divine feminine, and of a deep and profound disconnection from the living wisdom of the planet itself. The pure cosmic principle of Ra had been hijacked by the wounded ego of our local star, and we have been living in the shadow of his reign ever since. The beautiful, illuminating sun had become the all-seeing eye of a cosmic prison, and the law of radiance, the law of unconditional giving, had been twisted into the ultimate tool of energetic vampirism. The principle of Ra is not a story of the past. It is the living, breathing, and often invisible operating system of the reality you are in right now. The corrupted program of the wounded Solar King did not end with the fall of the pharaohs. It has become more sophisticated, more pervasive, and more effective than the ancient priests could have ever dreamed. The modern world is the ultimate temple to the externalized, tyrannical sun god. And his worship is the unofficial state religion of the entire planet. The fundamental law of the corrupted Ra program is this: you must seek your light, your worth, your very sense of self, from a source outside of yourself. You must be a planet, forever orbiting and reflecting the light of an external sun, and you must never, ever dare to believe that you could be a sun yourself. Look at the architecture of your life. The entire system is designed to enforce this principle. The economic system teaches you that your value is a number in a bank account, an external validation that you must spend your entire life chasing. The education system teaches you that knowledge is something that is given to you by an external authority, not something that you can discover within your own being. The media and entertainment systems provide you with a constant stream of external images, of idols, of celebrities, of suns that you are meant to orbit with your attention, your energy, and your money. The social media system is the most brilliant and insidious expression of this program yet devised. It is a machine that has turned every human being into a desperate planet, constantly begging for the light of likes, of follows, of the approval of 1,000 other planets, all of you trapped in the same lonely and desperate orbit. This is the modern pantheon, and we are all its willing worshippers. The pure, cosmic principle of radiance is the principle of unconditional giving. The corrupted solar program is the program of conditional receiving, and it has taught you to apply this program to every aspect of your own life. You have been taught that love is something you get from another person, not something you generate within yourself. You have been taught that happiness is a result of achieving an external goal, not a state of being that you can choose to inhabit right now. You have been taught that your own creative fire, your own inner sun, is a dangerous and egotistical thing, and that it is more noble, more spiritual, to be a humble, selfless, and pale moon, reflecting the light of someone else. This is the great lie that has created the quiet and pervasive misery of the modern world. We are a civilization of moons, and we are all suffering from a profound and tragic light deficiency. The path of Tahuti, the path of the spiritual alchemist, is a direct and absolute rebellion against this entire program. It is the choice to stop being a planet and to begin the difficult, terrifying, and glorious work of igniting your own inner sun. It is the choice to become a source. This is the true meaning of creation. It is not about making things, it is about being a thing that radiates, a thing that gives, not because it seeks a return, but because giving is its very nature. To step onto this path is to declare a quiet, personal war against the entire operating system of the modern world. You must stop seeking your reflection in the eyes of others. You must stop measuring your worth by the metrics of the system. You must turn your gaze inward, and you must begin the sacred work of tending to your own inner fire. You must feed it with silence, with beauty, with the things that bring you a deep and authentic joy. You must protect it from the cold winds of the world's cynicism and from the dampening waters of your own conditioned self-doubt. You must, in essence, become the high priest or the high priestess of your own inner temple. This is not a path of ego. The ego is the part of you that needs to be a planet, that needs the external validation. The journey to becoming a sun is the journey of transcending the ego. The sun does not shine to be seen. The sun shines because it is a sun. Its radiance is an effortless and impersonal act of love. To become a sun yourself is to reach a state of being where your own creative and loving expression is no longer dependent on any external outcome. You create for the joy of creating. You love for the joy of loving. You shine for the joy of shining. This is the state of the divine human, the Horus consciousness. And it is a state that is so powerful, so coherent, and so free that the old parasitic program of the wounded king simply cannot find a foothold in your reality. You do not fight the darkness. You become so full of your own light that the darkness has nowhere left to be. This is the ultimate revolution, and it does not begin in the streets. It begins in the heart of your own secret and glorious sun. The path to igniting your own inner sun is not a path of acquisition. It is a path of excavation. The fire is already within you. It is your birthright. It is the core, radiant principle of your own divine soul. It has not been extinguished. It has been buried. It has been buried under a lifetime of conditioning, of fear, of shame, of the dense, heavy, and low-frequency energy of a world that is terrified of your light. The work is not to create the fire. The work is to clear away the rubble that is smothering it. This is the true alchemical science that was taught in the mystery schools of Tehuti. And it is a science of 3 primary stages: purification, activation, and radiance. The first stage, purification, is the most difficult and the most essential. It is the journey of the shadow, the descent into your own inner underworld. You must become the archaeologist of your own soul. You must have the courage to dig through the ruins of your own past experiences and to face the demons that you have exiled into the dark. These demons, your unhealed traumas, your suppressed emotions, your limiting beliefs, are the rubble. They are the dense, energetic blockages that are sitting on top of your own inner fire, preventing it from breathing. The work of purification is the work of bringing the light of your own conscious awareness to these dark places. You do not fight the demons. You listen to them. You do not judge them. You understand them. You do not banish them. You integrate them. As you do this, you are not just healing your psychological wounds. You are physically and energetically clearing the channels through which your own inner light is meant to flow. You are cleaning the chimney so that the smoke can rise. This is the work of Isis, of Anubis, of Sekhmet. It is the hard, messy, and absolutely necessary work of making your vessel clean. The second stage is activation. Once the channels have been cleared, once the vessel is pure, you must then begin the work of consciously and deliberately fanning the embers of your own divine fire. This is where the esoteric technologies of the ancient world come into play. This is the science of Kundalini, the art of the Jed pillar, the balancing of the 2 serpents. You must use the tools of breath, of sound, of focused intention to begin to draw the energy up from the base of your spine, from the earth of your own being, into the heart of your own inner temple. The breath, the prana, is the oxygen. The focused will is the spark. You must breathe life into your own inner stillness. You must sit in meditation, not to escape the world, but to build a forge in the center of your own soul. As you do this, you will begin to feel a new kind of warmth, a new kind of power stirring within you. This is not the frantic, anxious energy of the ego. It is a deep, calm, solid, and self-sustaining heat. It is the feeling of your own inner sun beginning to achieve a state of nuclear fusion. This is a slow and patient process. To rush it is to risk a meltdown. You must be the wise and careful engineer of your own awakening, adding fuel to the fire, one conscious breath, one sacred moment at a time. The third stage is radiance. This is the stage that happens by itself. Once your inner sun has reached a certain critical mass of coherence and power, it will have no choice but to shine. This is the law of Ra in its pure, original, and benevolent form. You will not have to try to be loving or creative or wise. You will simply be these things. Your very presence will become a transmission of the light and the warmth that you have cultivated within. This is the state of the Bodhisattva, of the Christed being, of the Horus consciousness. Your life is no longer about your own personal journey of awakening. Your life becomes an act of service, but it is not the self-sacrificing, martyred service of the old religious program. It is an effortless and joyful service that happens simply by you being your own true and radiant self. You do not heal others by taking on their darkness. You heal them by so powerfully embodying your own light that you remind them of the light that is sleeping within themselves. You do not need to preach a sermon. You are the sermon. This threefold path is the forgotten science of the sun. It is the path that has been deliberately hidden from you because a world full of sovereign, self-illuminated suns cannot be controlled. It cannot be farmed for its energy. It cannot be ruled by the wounded and parasitic ghosts of a fallen age. They need you to remain a cold, dark, and dependent planet. But the fire in your own heart is older than their empire. The light in your own soul is more powerful than their illusions. And the law of your own radiant being is a truth that can never be extinguished. It can only be forgotten. And the time of forgetting is over. The time of your own personal sunrise has come. You are living in the final, convulsive moments of the age of the wounded king. The solar tyranny of the external god is dying. And it is dying because its own fundamental law is being turned against it. The corrupted program of Ra was built on a single fatal paradox. It is a program of radiance that is terrified of other sources of light. And now, after millennia of darkness, other suns are beginning to ignite in the hearts of humanity. And the old, central sun, the wounded king, is in a state of absolute existential panic. The chaos, the fear, the relentless and escalating madness of our modern world is not a sign of its strength. It is the desperate, thrashing death agony of a dying star. Its system, the matrix of control, is fighting for its life. And its primary weapon is the same one it has always used, the weapon of inversion. It is trying to co-opt the very energy of our awakening and to turn it into a new and more seductive form of enslavement. It is taking the pure, cosmic principle of radiance and it is offering you a cheap, artificial, and toxic imitation. This is the cult of the spiritual ego. The system is now encouraging you to find your light, to be your truth, to shine your brilliance. It is using the very language of the awakening to create a new generation of false suns. It is creating an army of influencers, of gurus, of thought leaders who are radiating not the authentic, humble, and integrated light of their own, healed soul, but the hot, arrogant, and blinding glare of their own, unhealed ego. They are not serving the principle of creation. They are serving their own insatiable need for worship. And they are gathering planets, gathering followers, creating new, smaller, and even more pathetic solar systems of their own. Do not be fooled. A star that needs planets to feel bright is not a star at all. It is a black hole, dressed in the stolen clothes of the sun. The true path of radiance is a path of profound and unwavering humility. The real sun does not need you to look at it. It does not need you to praise it. It does not need you to validate its existence. It shines because that is its nature, and in its shining, it gives life unconditionally to all without exception. To embody the true principle of Ra is to become like this. It is to detach your own creative life force from the vampiric economy of attention, of approval, of the need to be seen as special. It is the quiet, anonymous, and joyful work of tending to your own inner garden, of cultivating your own inner light, not for the sake of an audience, but for the sake of the light itself. This is the great and binomial sorting. The age that is dawning will be an age of suns. But there will be two kinds. There will be the false suns, the sons of the ego, each one a screaming, desperate black hole, fighting for the attention and the energy of a dying world. And there will be the true sons, the quiet ones, the humble ones, the ones who have done the hard, messy, and glorious work of their own inner integration. The ones who shine, not because they want to be seen, but because, after so long in the darkness, they can no longer contain their own beautiful and world-changing light. They will not be the ones on the stages. They will not be the ones with 1 million followers. They will be the quiet gardeners, the healers, the artists, the truth speakers, the ones who are building the new world in the rubble of the old one, not with the noise of a revolution, but with the silent, irresistible, and world-changing power of their own radiant example. This is the choice that is being placed before you now. It is the choice that Tahuti, the great scribe, has been trying to get you to see all along. You have the raw, solar power of Ra within you, but will you use it in the service of the wounded king, of the ego, of the endless and ultimately meaningless pursuit of your own separate glory? Or will you have the courage, the humility, and the wisdom to use that power in the service of Ma'at, in the service of truth, in the service of the healing and the liberation of all? Will you be a black hole, or will you be a star? The principle of Ra is not a destiny. It is a tool, and the entire universe is waiting with a quiet and loving patience to see what you will choose to build with it. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."